Welcome to East Asia Political Economy class. Today I want to finish up Japanese economic development. So we have 2 weeks left, I think. I mean, we have more classes, but I want to spend like each week for modern development of China, Korea, and Japan. So that's why I kind of hurry up for Japanese part. So I prepare not like a PPT file, but instead my article. So I want to introduce one by one what's the how Japan did that for economic development. So that's what I wanted to explain. So last time I talked about like economic development by showing 4 different categories of Japan and South Korea. And China. So where's a theoretical framework? If you look at here, so I explained the role of states in East Asian states as a pathfinder, innovator, risk taker, and monitor. So last time I explained what's the main roles for each pathfinder, innovator, risk taker, and monitor. So here is the table that I show to you, right? So Pathfinder is set the overall national and specific industrial goals in the mid and long term, not the only mid and long term, but from the very beginning, they set the overall national and specific industrial goal. So Japan did that, South Korea did that, and China did that. The difference between China and Korea or Japan is that the China's main player is not central government. Instead of central government, China's main actor is a local government. So that's the difference. But Korea EPB and Japan MITI actually play the same things. And then the first thing they did as a pathfinder is set the overall national and specific industrial goals. And they launch new industries and establish its value chain. That's there as a pathfinder. So I'll explain one by one how Japan did that. An innovator is actively participate in the R&D of new technologies and nurture related industries. So not only Korea but also Japan, they started with light industry when Korean War occurred, and then light industry, and then high technology industry, chemical and heavy and chemical industry. So while they jump up like that, they the government actually participate in the R&D. So I gave example of VLSI project. So I will wrap it up one more time today. And risk taker is support and handle firms' difficulties by funding national R&Ds, providing subsidies, modifying institutional system, protecting the domestic market, and supporting specific firms with various policy methods. So risk taking, that is not what Japanese government failed later on. So this article is actually focused on how South Korea succeed in terms of the semiconductor industry, but not Japan. So while I'm explaining, I explained the problem of risk taking that Japanese government did. So I will explain one more time. And monitor checking whether industries and national firms going the right way and supporting them with the right and timely policies. So differently from, I mean, monitor is it occurs the whole process as the framework shows here. So I show the framework, right? So in this framework, Pathfinder, so that's maybe the beginning, an innovator and risk taker as well. So risk taking also, it's not the end, but time to time it occurs. Here. So let me start with the Pathfinder. But the most important thing is we should understand the new technological characteristics. So technical characteristic of semiconductor is different from other kinds of products, right? So I gave example of a pen. So if you design pen, you can sell like forever, like 10 or 20 years. You don't need to invest R&D to develop or update, right? Maybe you should change the design kind of things, but you don't have to focus R&D investment all the time. But semiconductor is different because you have to upgrade every time. So that's the difference between the light industry maybe or these days new technologies. So semiconductor, as soon as you start to sell like certain megabyte semiconductor, you should invest, upgrade, right? So that's the difference between the new technology and others here. That is important because of risk taking. So government not only risk taking but also innovating and risk taking. So innovation means you should update a new industry, and then this new industry you need uh so you should update, right? So you should update new technology, and then because of that the government should spend a lot of R&Ds for that, and at the same time government should take a role as risk taking. So risk taking and innovating roles are used to be the firm's main roles, but in East Asian countries these roles are taken by government. So government play these roles instead of the firms. And let's start Pathfinder first. So I start Japan and then Korea, so we don't have to go back to understand Korea because we have enough time to spend to understand Korean development strategy. So let's start with Japan. So Japanese semiconductor as a pathfinder. So they start quite early, but I don't want to just focus on like the semiconductor, but I wanted to see as a whole. So throughout this example, semiconductor industry is an example. So I wanted to see how MITI play roles for economic development. So MITI actually they started to help to development of semiconductor, but here is the semiconductor demand. MITI of Japan, they start semiconductor and they focus on industrial sector. So if you look at the data here, so semiconductor usually need the demand of semiconductor started military. So if you look at the data, until 1962, so computers industry, private sector, they do not need semiconductor. So Japan, they developed semiconductor quite earlier than this, but they try to focus on computers industry or private sector. And then mostly the US semiconductor market focused on military. So U.S. actually make more money for semiconductor, and then the MITI actually decided we should focus on private sector or industry sector because the military sector U.S. already dominated. So the Japan heavily depend on the U.S. So they do not want to touch on nerves of the U.S. So that's why they started with the industry and private sector first. And then the thing is computer sector, industry and private sector has grown. And because of that, the Japanese the semiconductor industry it could expand like that. But the point is here is that the MITI actually set the goal, right? And then they set the goal is that we should focus on the private sector, not military sector, because of the U.S. So that's actually to set the goal, and they find the path of the market, right? So that's what MITI did that. So MITI as a pathfinder, they did this. And Korea, let's pass up Korea and innovator. So the state as an innovator, the Japanese case, MITI play a role, an instrumental role in propelling the evolution of beta technologies. So this includes the augmentation of memory capacity and the miniaturization of semiconductor dimension. So the semiconductor dimension, the capacity of semiconductor is heavily dependent on two things, right? The first thing is memory capacity, and the second thing is how small it is. So that's why they focus on two things: augmentation of memory capacity and the miniaturization of semiconductor dimension. So for this, the if you look at the R&D cost, it's increased significantly as the DM generation has been upgraded. So as you can see, like cost of R&D was $110 million, but it has been significantly increased, right? And then one firm cannot spend this much money for R&D at the time. So the government actually, what government did is the government decided to mitigate this R&D expenditure. If you look at, so here, so I gave you example of VLSI, very large semiconductor industry like that. So MITI launched VSLI technology research project to keep pace with the U.S. semiconductor industry. So MITI restructured the existing big six firms into two large groups. So one group is Fujitsu, Hitachi, Mitsubishi, and NEC, Toshiba. So they established cooperative laboratory to bolster joint R&D. So the government, what government did is they spend R&D and then they investigate this R&D. They spend R&D money. Money actually came from the R&D. Money came for R&D came from the government. So government did instead of the corporations, and then they also spent in personnel, so people who work there. So I mean, Korea is a little bit different from Japan. So Korean case, we have a lot of national institute. So many national institute, they develop technology instead of the firms. But government, the Japanese government is different as they just make labs. So MITI labs. And then as you can see, so last time we talked about it, right? So like technology development, so government spent crazy money for that. And then it was 4 years and most of firms were there, so they are major six firms were there, and then they do research, right? And as I pointed out, the managing director is from MITI. So MITI developed this laboratory, and the MITI actually lead the joint laboratory. So they contribute for the technology. And not only VSLI, so this is one of the projects the government spent. Not only VLSI, they use multiple projects. So Asuka project is one of them. And SLET. So that was also project was also supported by government. So not only VLSI, so government actually spent a lot of money for the innovation. And this is top 10 seller in 1972 and 1987. As you can see, top 10 farms are mostly the Japanese farms, as you can see. Let's skip, let's pass on Korean one and let's talk about risk taking. So, the problem that the Japan, I mean, I'm talking about semiconductor here, but not uh, the Japan's economy faced a lot of challenges from late 1980s, and then the what I wanted to point out that what Mitti's choice was. That's what I wanted to actually focus on. So the development characteristics of Japanese development is very similar to Korean one, that of Korean, and somewhat similar to China, because China actually mimicked the Japanese development and Korean development. And then since we have studied both countries, so Japan is a lot easier to understand. Uh, they in this article here they criticize predatory strategies of MITI. So ministry was accused of supporting farms in a way that allowed them to reduce production cost and win price competition against foreign companies. So they sell really semiconductor in a really cheap price. So they actually dominated the semiconductor market as a whole. So other firms, like especially the U.S. once was dominated power in semiconductor industry, but since the Japanese semiconductor is a lot cheaper, people started buy Japanese semiconductor instead of the U.S. And the U.S. actually pointed out that the Japanese semiconductor market use predatory strategies. So predatory strategy is that it is so criticized pricing of Japanese 16K DRAM semiconductors, alleging they were 20 to 30% cheaper than their American counterparts due to government support and two-tier pricing strategies. So two-tier pricing strategies and government support. So government support we already actually have learned. So government support is that what? So government spend R&D instead of their farms. That's actually the government support. And government sometimes directly subsidize money. The government directly fund the money to the farms. That's the one of the things about semiconductor government support. And then second thing is the price two-tier pricing strategy. So I already talked about two-tier pricing strategy. This is two-tier pricing strategy is this. So let's say you selling cell phones. So your cell phone made in Japan, and then let's say if you want to buy cell phone in Japan, then it's let's say $100. But if you buy the same cell phone abroad, then it's only like $70. So it's a lot cheaper, right? So you should sell at least to make money, you should sell this cell phone at least $80. But if you sell $7 and $10 actually short, right? So you spend more expensive in domestic market, then you can actually make the gaps, right? So you can fill out the gap by selling different price. So you sell like $100 in Tokyo, in Japan, and $7 in abroad, then there's like $10 short in abroad, but you can make like $30 in Tokyo. So you can fill up the gap. So does why did Japanese government stick to this two-tier pricing strategy? Is that they want you to make the buying patterns, right? So if you once you have a buying pattern, then people do not change this buying pattern unless there is really cheap things out there, right? So Japanese government, they want you to make this buying pattern. And second thing is they want you to make this semiconductor competitive enough. So that's why they select this two-tier pricing strategies. So this strategy enabled domestic market to purchase Japanese semiconductor at high prices while they are supplied to overseas market at lower prices. So the Japanese economic development usually so it's very similar to the Korean. So they spend a lot of money for the farm. They set up the goals. They provide a lot of subsidies to the farm, and then they stick to this. They select, implement these specific policies for economic growth. So that's the thing of Japanese economic development. So there is a huge criticism toward MITI. So MITI shifted its strategy from two-tier pricing to a more restrained approach. So this is the industrial policies that the MITI adopt. So this is very interesting because usually farms should decide which price should produce or which price they will sell. But the Japanese case, MITI actually decide all these things. This is very interesting. I mean, uh, so like we have students from Western society. In the Western society, we believe in market. We believe in invisible hand. But this one is completely different because we do not. I mean, the Japanese government, they do not trust invisible hand. Instead, they make the price. So ministry guided Japanese firms to either limit their export to the U.S. market or decrease production to increase prices. So see, the ministry actually guided the Japanese farms to either limit their export. So then the US, they wanted to reduce market share in the US, right? Or decrease production. So if you decrease production, then the price will goes up. So the the government, the MITI actually ordered to the farms to do that. So, for example, to alleviate trade tensions between the US and Japan, NEC and Fujitsu delayed their sales of 64K DRAM to the US. So, this is very interesting, right? So, the government actually decided what to do for the firms. And then this is kind of risk taking. They analyze the market and they analyze this criticism and they let the farms know what is going on, right? And additionally, Hitachi and Toshiba announced plans to cut their export to the US by 30% and 20% respectively from the 1984 level, and the NEC decided to reduce export to the US while increasing its production there. So MITI actually coordinate this all this product and they what to do kind of things. This is risk taking. And the most significant risk taking is actually a semiconductor trade agreement in 1986. So there was a Plaza Agreement between the U.S. and the Japan. It is not Plaza Agreement is about like Japanese cars. So Japanese cars too much dominated in the U.S. market. So that's why they make this agreement. And then semiconductor agreement is kind of like Plaza Agreement. So agreeing to collaborate on anti-dumping measures that Japan would increase U.S. market share in Japan. So the U.S. complained that you sell this many semiconductor in the U.S. market, but we cannot sell anything into the Japan. So you have to accept, you have to buy the U.S. product. That's what it is, the semiconductor trade agreement. And the 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 article I shows that why Japan could not succeed in terms of the semiconductor market is because they fail to managing this risk. So I talked about like MITI could not overcome second the biggest challenge. So this one uh, from 1990s, like Japan, they failed to adjust. They failed to manage the market well, but because MITI lost its power a lot because of this Plaza Agreement, so they push like uh, so in 1990s uh, there was a huge wave of globalization, and South Korea was highly affected by globalization, and then Japan is same. And then Japan could not overcome the second one because I think the MITI lost its confidence a lot. I mean, we will talk about it, but uh, this article actually showed quite well that's why Japan could not manage its challenge, right? And I don't want to talk about like 2000, but 2000 they changed the name from MITI to Ministry, the MITI to the Commerce and Information Policy Bureau of METI. So Ministry of Economy and Trade and Industry. So it was MITI, but they changed the name as METI. So Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. So they actually changed the name METI, and then it talks about like why the Japanese government lost its power and failed. I mean, they implement failing industries that I don't. I mean, if you have time, read carefully, then you can have idea. And this is Korean case. Korean case could overcome its economic challenge. But Korea has similar challenge as Japan has faced, but Korean could overcome because government get involved deeply. So this is different from the Japanese government and Korean government. So Japanese government there was disintegrations between the state and farms. So the since the METI lost its confidence, they do not want to engage much on the economy anymore because they keep failing. But Korean case is different. They get involved more and more on the farm because they spend a lot of money for to save these farms, and that's why they just do not. They can't. The Korean government cannot let these farms fail. So that's the main difference between the Korean one and the Japanese ones. So the monitor is the MITI has monitored supply and demand in the market on multiple occasions, collecting and analyzing data while issuing specific orders to the farm. So MITI strategy can be divided in two periods. So before the U.S. and semiconductor before and after semiconductor occurred on 1986. So before the, as I explained, MITI adopt predator strategy, right? And MITI controlled export prices under government guidance, and then they provide cheaper price like that. So this is actually based on the monitoring. So they monitor what is going on and how much do you need, kind of thing. So without monitoring, it's impossible that government uh, order forms like that. And then after the MITI, the Japanese product, uh, the government try not to get involved. So this is monitoring process, but monitoring process, I don't want to. I mean, I don't. There's no very significant issues here, but I wanted to say is that MITI was quite well. MITI did quite well monitoring things before 1986. They published almost every year the report on the market, every sector. So if you look at the MITI's uh, report, it's very specific. So they divide into they divide into product they wanted to focus on, like for instance cars or like semiconductor or computer industry. So they divide into like that, and then they divide more specifically into like so like for instance computer, then they have different component of computer, right? Element. So they specifically like designate how much they wanted to produce, how much they will spend for that specific industry. So government, how much government will spend for this specific industry. So this is very specific compared to even Korea. So they like they make plans every year, and then this report based on the monitor. So government actually monitor what they need to analyze, and then the they like predict world market and that how much Japan she should share in the market. So this is every year they published report like that. And this is actually about like the Japanese economic development strategy.